So good evening, everyone. This is the March 13th, 2018 meeting of the Middlebury Board of Selectmen, Selectboard, excuse me. First order of business is for swearing in of the new elected officials by the town clerk.
All right. Lindsay is behind with Can we take a picture? We haven't started yet.
What?
We haven't started.
Oh, I thought, okay.
Raise your right hand. And I would ask you if you will solemnly swear or affirm that you will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont, and you will not directly or indirectly do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof, so help you God, or under the pains and penalties of perjury. And I further ask if you solemnly swear or affirm that you'll faithfully execute the office of Select Board for the town of Middlebury and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons to the best of your judgment and ability according to law, so help you God, or under the pains and penalties of perjury. All right, so you both need to sign here. Date and sign and date and sign. Oops, sorry. And
Agenda online, you and I swear back.
13,
What's that?
The agenda.
I know, I saw that.
yes.
Oh, only a year
Good
ago.
old days. Oh, for those good old days.
That's it, right?
Sign here, sign here. Here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both for serving,
Thank you.
and I want to congratulate you both on your elections.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'll open up the floor for nominations for the position of chair of the board.
Well, I'd like to nominate Brian Carpenter for the chair of the board.
I second.
Are there any other nominations? There being none, I'll take a vote on the position of chair with Brian Carpenter as the nominee. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Victor?
Victor?
Victor, are you there?
What? I can't hear very well, I'm afraid.
Okay, Kathleen opened up for nomination for chair, and they nominated me, and they're voting on it, and so Kathleen's looking for your vote.
I vote yes.
Thank you. And I'll pass the meeting over to Brian, your new chair.
Thank you for the vote of confidence. So the next item is to elect a vice chair. And so I would be looking for nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Nick.
A nomination for Nick as vice chair,
I'd like to second that if I could.
and seconded by Victor. Are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate Laura, please.
Nomination for Laura,
Second?
seconded, okay. So we have two nominations. Any other nominations? Okay, so maybe it'd be good to hear from our nominees, what their thoughts are. Either one of you want to go first?
Go ahead.
I am really interested in being vice chair this year. I think I would complement Brian well, given the committee assignments I've had and that I'm looking forward to this year. So that's the reason why I'd like to be considered for vice chair. And I know that Nick has been a vice chair in the past, and I've appreciated his service. I just like the opportunity to learn this role and to provide it. for our board, and I think that the rail construction project on which Nick is very committed can still be served well by him. You know, and I think we saw that this past year with Susan in that capacity as vice chair. So, you know, I just like to be considered for those reasons.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Nick?
Well, you know, I'm sitting there thinking of really, it's an important thing is to really understand the role of the vice chair. And there's really two key on there. One is to be the assistant to the chair and when necessary. An example would be when we have multiple projects and tasks that are undertaken that require a similar time frame. That when you have two experienced people, one, the chair can do one, and then the vice chair can complement and do the others. I think this past year, we saw Brian's time taken quite extensively with the bridge project. I mean, he was frequently going to Montpelier. There were times, I believe, there was redundancies. You almost had to be at two places at once, and that's where experience comes in handy, is because someone who's familiar with many of the aspects of the town and could fill that. Now, the bridge project's about to get underway, so, you know, we're going to see, I believe, good progress forward, but there's still going to be some demand on leadership time. It also gives a chance now to start to move into some of the other things that are important. I think a big one for me is this list that we had put together with Kathleen of these prioritized items. And I think because we were so focused on some of the other aspects, notably the bridge, we didn't give it its due. And that's a pretty significant thing, and I think it's something that a vice chair could serve well at, helping Kathleen and town staff implement a process to proceed with these different items, but also to act as a sort of a point of check to make sure that when we have things that are maybe emerge that are important to us, that we don't know, we implement them and we get them to the staff in a way it doesn't overstress our staff. So again, having a redundancy is good. The second role, which is important, is that the vice chair is the backup for the chair. So at any time, there could be a need for that vice chair to step in, whether it's an illness or an injury, which we hope never happens, or conflicting obligations, which do happen to all of us at times. Again, or when there's just those periods when you need multiple tasks done at the same time. And so, you know, the question comes down to experience. Yes, I have done it before, and as one of the longest serving board members, it's what I've done and I can do again. Now, my interest in this is really only for this 1 year, to get this, while the bridge project gets underway and we get some other tasks, notably that to establish the methodology for those 10 items or so moving forward. After that, I know there's a lot of, every one of you could do the job, and at that point, somebody else can have it. So my interest is really just for this 1 year.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Would any of the nominating individuals be interested in speaking to why you're nominating or your feelings on it?
Can I?
Absolutely. Heather?
So, I think last year having Susan and Brian together gave us a different look, and it was nice having complementary personalities in the kind of executive roles of the board. While I think any one of us could probably do a good job, I'd like someone who hasn't had an opportunity to have an opportunity and learn some of those leadership skills and experience that Nick already has. And I think it's a good way to balance. You know, I think Laura's strengths are different than Brian's. So when we have a big list of projects to do, I think Laura could handle the projects that Brian's not going to be concentrating on because he's going to have other rail bridge and other projects. So I think Laura would be a good balance and complement to Brian, and I think she deserves a chance to learn and gain the experience. So that's why I'm nominating her. Not that Nick, I mean, he's already proven himself. We know he can do a good job. He's done a good job for us in the past. I would just like to see other people have that learning opportunity, so. I think either one's gonna do a great job.
Thank you.
Rod?
I wish if you give us the two choices, that'd be good. We won't have any problems. We can have both of them. Both are very capable. Laura has been extremely helpful to me personally in the last year, and getting used to being on the select board, and especially in election, she was my guide. She guided me through how to navigate this election process. And Nick has been equally helpful the entire year. He's become my personal friend also. The reason I chose Nick was the reason Nick gave us the leadership skills that he has. We are in a crucial time with the bridge project. I think we need somebody who has that experience. That's why I chose Nick.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything? Okay, so we have two candidates, and great arguments both ways. Tough choice here. So, all in favor of Nick for vice, please signify by saying aye.
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 And Laura, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So I guess I'm forced to make a deciding vote here. Just weighing both arguments. The only question I have, Nick, is any idea how your travel schedule's looking this coming year?
It's actually toned down. Last year was the worst it's been ever, but it's actually toning down. It's a lot more manageable than it was last year. And as we've done before, we can keep in coordination so that we're not taken away at the same time. I think we had one time last year, actually, when we were away at the same time.
There's two values I'm tossed up on. I would love to have, I think we have a very diverse board, and I also think diversity in leadership is important. There's a couple pet projects of mine that I'd love to get something going on, and one of them is one that I think Nick would probably be effective at generating. I'm gonna vote for Nick on this one, and plan on voting for. It may be 1 year to get this going, and then I really think we need to look for diversity in the leadership. I think it's. But I would really like to see us get something going with EDI planning and discussion, and I think it's critical for the town, and you were key in getting that started. And it's dead right now, but it needs to, in my mind, the town needs some activity in that. So I'm going to vote for Nick, I guess, based upon that. Next is approve.
May I just?
Absolutely.
I understand that was really a difficult decision, and I respect that, and I respect our board. And I am so proud that we have the diversity on our board. Like, if you look at us statewide, we are really a unique board in terms of our representation. So I just want to thank the Middlebury voters for providing that, and I really hope you're going to get some wonderful results from us this year. We look forward to serving you. I do.
And you have no idea how difficult it was for us to choose between the two of you.
Yeah, it's something I'm proud of, and I think you always will come to a better solution with a diverse membership of a committee. And, thankfully, the voters have given us a diverse board. And so, and I think we function extremely well within our diversity, so and we all seem to listen to each other, and so
We do,
it's been a pleasure.
And, that, you really were put in a position that, I'm glad I wasn't in at this time, but thank you for the support, and let's move forward and do great things, and, as we have been, start to visualize what Middlebury looks like when this bridge project's done. Where do we want to be?
So, next is approval of the agenda.
Victor, would you like to get off now?
Yeah, did Nick get elected?
He did.
Okay, yeah, you can, yeah, I'm done.
Okay, thanks.
Thank everybody.
Feel better.
Take care.
Take care of yourself, Nick.
I mean, Victor.
Victor.
I know you meant
Okay,
Victor.
say Nick.
I will, thank
We
you.
knew,
Yeah, take care of yourself, Nick.
yeah, we knew who you meant.
Approval of the agenda. Looking for,
I'll move, okay.
Sorry,
one of you want a second?
I'll second.
Moved and
Laura can
seconded. All in favor?
I have one
You have-
minor adjustment
You
on
do?
item number 9. Karen Duguay and Nancy Malcolm will be presenting the 2018 marketing plan on behalf of the Neighbors Together Community Action Group.
And I have number 2. You have it, elected members sworn in, Brian Carpenter and Laura. It should be Lindsay and me, I think.
Right.
You don't want to get.
I know, my term's already clicking.
Okay.
I knew who I was swearing in.
Yeah, I know.
Got the right names. Okay. Any other amendments? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the agenda with the amendments, 2 amendments, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, approval of the minutes of our February 28th regular select board meeting.
I'll move.
Moved,
Second,
moved and seconded. Changes.
I didn't find anything.
They're just minor typos, which I don't think are worth noting,
Okay.
so they were good.
So hearing nothing but minor typos. All in favor of the approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And we have 1 abstention. Next, citizen comments. Is there anyone here for something that's not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go on to board organization. Some more stuff we need to set. Number 1 is the regular meeting day and newspaper of record. So a regular meeting day, we've typically met the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month. And we meet at 7. Is that still good with everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Next is, do we need to do these in a motion, or are we okay just to accept them administratively?
There is a motion.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion that we have our regular meeting day as the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of the month
Do we have to say time or no?
at 7:00 PM.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of accepting the 2nd and 4th Tuesday at 7:00, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, now we need to establish the newspaper of record. It has been, in as long as I've been on the board, the Addison Independent, unless somebody else has strong feelings in another direction. I'd seek a motion.
I'll move that we designate the award-winning Addison Independent.
I'll
That's the
second.
Select Board's pub.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay. So we need to a couple of our assignments early on. One is the Addison County Solid Waste Management District Board of Supervisors Delegate and Alternate. Eric Murray has been our delegate, and did he indicate?
Yes, he did.
Desired. Okay. And Laura has served as an alternate, and are you still okay serving as an alternate on that, or would you like to see if somebody else would like?
I am. I didn't know if anybody else was interested in looking at that. It's been interesting because they're dealing with the food scrap collection as one of the upcoming issues, and to that effect, I did support Eric and others in having a display during town meeting. It's at the library now that shows you your composting options. So, and the website is really good, the Addison County Solid Waste Management website, so you might find it really interesting and informing. I scan the notes. I don't attend all the meetings that delegate and alternate delegate can attend both. So Middlebury has a weighted vote there. You have 4 votes, so it's significant because of the size of our town, if critical business is being done. So that's, what you would be doing. And I'm happy to continue doing it, but I'm also happy if somebody else would like to do it, to pass the baton.
How often do they meet?
Once a month, usually on Thursdays, at the Regional Planning Commission.
Is there anybody in the audience who's interested?
Right, it doesn't have to be a select board member.
Applying for that? Okay. Is there any other board member that wants to wrestle Laura for it? Okay. So, I'd seek a motion then to appoint our delegate and alternate.
Make a motion to appoint the Middlebury delegate as Eric Murray, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And our alternate as Laura Sermley to serve on the Addison County Solid Waste Management District Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Farhad. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. And then to establish our Green Up Day coordinator, which is coming around the corner, in recognition of Green Up Day's 50th anniversary in 2018, resident Peg Martin, as you saw at the town meeting, which actually surprised me because she had announced her retirement last year as Middlebury's long-serving Green Up Day coordinator. But I think that was a strong statement that she's willing and interested in serving in that capacity for one more year to really make the anniversary year a special year and a great Green Up Day. So unless somebody wants to wrestle Peg, and I think she's going to be really tough on that one, then I would seek a
Well,
motion to
I do
appoint.
hope that somebody might assist Peg, that would be interested next year. And I think that she had a great idea at town meeting to offer some kind of celebration that day. And there is, there actually is a lot of activity that weekend, which we'll talk about maybe later. But anyway, I think it's a great service that she's provided, and I love the day.
A motion, please.
Well,
I move to accept Peg.
coming out of her retirement.
She's out of retirement. She's on the school
And I'll
board.
second that one.
And Farhad seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay. The Select Board Strategic Planning Retreat. Just as a reminder, we've scheduled it around Paula Cope being able to be there. We tentatively put Thursday, April 12th on the calendar. We just need to verify that that's still going to work for everybody.
I'm good with that.
Will that work for you, Lindsay?
I think so, yeah, I can make it work.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna drive on with that then. Next, Ann, liquor licenses.
Just a second round of approvals, and I think there should be 4 of them listed. So it's 3 second-class licenses and 1 first-class with an outside consumption. And just looking for approval again pending inspection by police and fire chief.
I'll move that we provisionally approve the 2018 liquor license and outside consumption permit applications for the businesses that we've just mentioned. Do you need them all listed again?
No.
Okay, pending, of course, yeah, well, we said that, pending approval from public safety inspections.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
I think we just have 6 more outstanding, of which 2 may not be renewing, so should be coming together soon.
Okay. Chief?
That time of year, folks.
It seems like it was just yesterday.
It does. Anyway, every town in Vermont has to have an emergency operations plan. For the newer folks, just a 2-minute background on this. Years ago, many of the towns were not submitting their plans. They were looked at as too complicated for some of these small towns to do. We have not had that. We've had a full emergency operations plan for many years, which we update annually. But the state came out with a format to simplify the whole emergency management process for many of the local towns. And they've asked everybody to submit their plans, or at least a face sheet of their plans, on this thing that you've seen here called the Local Emergency Operations Plan. It's just a list of important contacts, who your shelters are, just some basic preparation information. And we update that every year and send that in as our plan. We do have a much more extensive plan. It examines vulnerabilities and response to vulnerabilities, command structures and things like that. That does not get sent to the state. We keep that here. I think they expressed some interest a few years ago not to get that, because it was really a local issue and not something they really wanted to pile these plans up. They wanted a standard form, and this is what you have is the standard form. It's been updated with the current information, contact information, names, who's the town manager, who's responsible for this, who's, that sort of stuff, government issues, as well as emergency response issues and coordination and some basic information. So that's what I'm submitting to you. The request is, again, to approve this for this year. It has to be approved annually. It's due May 1st every year, but I'm going to be absent for a few weeks with some orthopedic stuff, so I wanted to trying to get ahead of the game with all this stuff so we don't wait till the last minute. And that's what you have in front of you.
Questions of Chief?
No, I mean, it's a good plan, it works. We've seen it effectively work, so excellent job. I also like it does have a dynamic nature for emerging hazards as they come, so.
It's a living document.
It is a living document.
The larger plan is, it's constantly being changed and amended and updated as things change in town, and whatever is relevant to that, we try to keep it updated.
Right.
I'll make a motion to adopt the Town of Middlebury Emergency Operation Plan for 2018.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thanks, Chief.
Is that signed by the select board?
No, it's signed by the town manager.
Okay.
They authorize it, and then the manager signs it, and then I get it and send it off where it's got to go.
I'll need a signed copy.
Oh, sure, yeah. What I do is I do a PDF and distribute it.
I see that our chief is wearing the green, which is good, approaching this weekend.
Approaching the big day. All my relatives be proud.
So Karen and Nancy,
You want me to sit there? I don't care. Sure.
so the Neighbors Together Community Action Group has worked together to put together a proposal for spending of the $75,000 their marketing plan, and so that's what Karen and Nancy are going to review with us this evening.
Yes, thank you very much. So we're going to go through this very quickly. I know that you've had a chance to see it yourself, so we'll, we'll do what we can to speed through this. Just as a reminder, Neighbors Together is truly a stakeholder group and a grassroots group downtown. The whole community started with St. Stephen's, and our lead partner has been Better Middlebury Partnership, has truly stepped up and become great. We do have some representatives here tonight, some of the people that are on the board and some of the BMP members as well, just so that you know. And our entire goals have been to support the economic, social, cultural vitality and accessibility throughout this construction project. We were very fortunate, we were very fortunate to get $75,000 from VTrans, and we worked closely with Jim, and Jim was our point man batting for us the whole time, and it was great. We also have been asked if we will assume the $40,000 USDA grant that was done with, and the DIDC match. A little bit of that may have been spent, but not, just in some administrative things, but nothing really. So we have a total of $115,000 that we have been put in our steward to really take care of things for this year. One thing I'd like to say is that this is for 2018. The state knows that we plan to go back in 2019 and again in 2020, so that we will definitely have some good things in place for the whole community. Our look at it this year has been that, we can see the next slide here, but is to really make sure we drive the businesses. We do the most we can for marketing promotion, so we do a lot of infrastructure things that will help that. And it will not only help this year, it should help up going forward and throughout the bridge project and beyond is our goal here. So I think just as a quick overview, we have a pie chart that shows how this money is broken down. It's pretty clear. We're really pleased that a lot of it is going to be going into the website and help things there. And Karen, who did the yeoman's task on this, she did the most work. She went to Waterbury. She did a lot of research and truly set up this budget. We all vetted it, but I'm going to turn this over to Karen to go through things for you.
Head on to the next one. All right, so we're going to start off with a shopping rewards program. Basically what that looks like is a card that shoppers would get, and for every $10 spent, they'd get a stamp. At the end of 10 stamps, they turn it back in for $10 in Middlebury money. So what we're asking here in terms of an allotment is $20,000 in Middlebury money rewards, which ends up being 2,000 $10 increments given out. $4,000 to print Middlebury money in cards, and about $1,000 in marketing for a total of $25,000. This one makes me really excited because for that $20,000 that's distributed in Middlebury money means that 2,000 cards have been turned in with at least $100 spent per card, which ends up being a minimal investment back into our local economy of $220,000. So we feel like that's a pretty good return. I'm going to skip through these knowing that you guys have seen the timelines just because it's not super relevant. The only thing I want to mention is that we are going to be working very closely with the bank and the merchants. And this program, Farhad and I were actually talking earlier today, and he had an excellent point about this. This program gives us an opportunity to reach out to businesses beyond the downtown. It gives us an opportunity to strengthen the Middlebury Money program. So again, to Nancy's point about keeping an eye on improvements beyond this year, those are both really great things that we can actually use this money to then support those things. So we have some advertising campaigns to talk about. One of them would be a digitally focused campaign called #MidHiddenGems, where we would basically try to spotlight those items in Middlebury that you don't necessarily know you can find in Middlebury. So basically we would be trying to use digital marketing, and we would be using some of the USDA funding for this, which is specifically digital marketing, to promote local shopping and dining and strengthen the tie between the local community and the businesses. Then we also want to use some of these products that we're highlighting as prizes for different social media engagement opportunities. You can go ahead on. We want to do a multimedia local impact campaign. So that would be print, radio, and social media, which would emphasize the impact that shopping locally has on a community. I'm really envisioning a very positive, guilt-free campaign here that's just a feel-good, here's why it matters, strengthening those relationships between the merchants and their customers. And I also really want to show more of a direct breakdown of how dollars spent locally end up trickling through the entire local economy. And then we want to do a tourism-based campaign that's promoting Middlebury with a spread in Yankee Magazine. They're having a special feature called Winter in Vermont in their January and February issue. We want to do a spread that highlights Middlebury. We want to promote coming and shopping and dining and anything else you can do here. So this is the breakdown of that budget. As you can see, about $5,000 of that 19.3 is from the USDA fund. And then, you know, I've skipped over a little bit of this because I know that you guys had seen it before, the measurements of success for each one of these things, but we're going to use a little bit of anecdotal data from these businesses. Certainly if people are using those packages that we're promoting in Yankee Magazine, then we'll know that that drew tourism. And any sort of increased shopping, dining, you know, any of those things we'll be able to measure as a success. A Middlebury brochure. So the Addison Chamber of Commerce does a brochure for Virgins in Bristol that looks like this. They are paid listings and they highlight different things in the area. What we're proposing is all of the businesses in the area not paid. So it'd be much bigger and include everything. And so we got the figures for that. We're looking at about $3,700. 10,000 copies would be printed and distributed in 2018 via PP&D, which does the tourism racks all around the state. There's the timeline for that. So work would start very shortly. And then obviously if we can get 10,000 brochures out into the state, and those are all taken in 2018, that's 10,000 different individuals who have seen information about Middlebury, which is a success in and of itself. ExperienceMiddlebury.com. So we would like to do a fully integrated community calendar that can be linked to the other community calendars and populated with everybody else's information. Exactly. So we need to find some folks who can make this happen for us. And we have heard from numerous different businesses and organizations that this is something that is definitely missing in Middlebury. And I believe the technology exists at this point. If we have the funds to put towards it, we should really look into this. So that's what I'd like to see our website feature, as well as all the dining and shopping, the other area highlights, and parking. And I want to either have a mobile friendly site that is front-loaded with all of the parking information, very easily accessible, or we would have a corresponding app that makes finding parking in Middlebury really easy. So the timeline on this is very quick because we know that this is a pretty substantial amount of work, and also the USDA grant needs to be spent by August. So we're going to start off with an RFP, and then we'll be actually bringing those bids back to you with a recommendation. So we will be relying heavily on Google Analytics data to show increased usage of the site, as well as the different areas that seem to be getting the most traffic, and we would just be monitoring that as we go forward in terms of our measurement of success. Signage. So we want visually engaging signage that can be used for wayfinding and parking, and we would obviously be working closely with the town and various departments in the town on where those signs would go. When the temperatures were going up in town, numerous people were just sort of circling the parking lot. And at the time, we had the conversation about, great signage that shows where the other parking spaces may be, the other bigger lots to look at would be really helpful in those situations. So we want to get started right away. And actually, we already sort of have, the town has already started to make some gains there. So we're going to just proceed with that. And obviously, if we see any usage of those further away lots, then we'll know that the signage is helping, and then we'll have some anecdotal data that can correspond with that as well. Beautification in town. This is pretty self-explanatory. We just want to make town look a little nicer during this project. We want to incorporate some flower boxes with plantings around the downtown. We want to take on a public art project on the Triangle Park fence that's going to be going up shortly. And so we've budgeted about $5,500 for that. And that work will start very soon as well. And that one's also pretty, I mean, we just want it to look a little nicer. So that's not a huge chunk out of the budget, but we do feel like if we can make an impact there, we want to. Some special events to talk about: Midsummer Music and Movies and the Summer Block Party. So Midsummer Music and Movies, I don't know if you guys were aware of this or not, but the BMP actually started this 2 years ago, and it came out of the Neighbors Together forums originally, and we didn't want to wait until we had funding to do it. We just thought it was a really great idea that the community wanted, so we just started doing it and supporting it on our own. And so far, it's been really, I think, very successful, very well received. We added the movie component in last year, which was very popular. So it'll be Wednesday nights throughout the summer. And then last year, we also held the Summer Block Party and closed off the streets of downtown, featured live music. We want to do that again, shopping promotions, prizes, giveaways, etc. And we would coordinate, obviously, with Jim and the businesses. So for this, I'm budgeting about $10,500, and I just want to call attention to the fact that we are actually asking for some equipment to be supported through this instead of the series itself. We feel like businesses will still support this series to actually offset the cost. But last year and the year before, we had to borrow equipment from various town departments, and they're used in other ways. Parks and Rec uses it during the day for camps and things like that. And it was really fairly messy and inconvenient for everybody. And we feel like this is actually a much better investment of some of this money to support the event, these pieces of equipment can be used not just for this series, but really for any event throughout the year. So that's 10.5. And then, of course, anything that can generate awareness within the community of these events is successful. If we can get participation of businesses and attendance, and then the willingness of other organizations and businesses to participate, then that's definitely a success.
And we recognize, too, that this is a lot of work, and a lot of work's been put into it, and to make sure that the financial part is followed through, and we do everything. We have an administrative role in this, and both the Neighbors Together and the BMP have supported the idea that the $10,000 for an administrative fee go toward Karen for all the work that will be put into this. And so to remind people back, this is the original pie chart. And it just shows how it's diverse. It's a lot. That we know it's a lot, but it's also, we know it's doable. And we'll be doing it through a lot of different subcommittees as well. Then, as we said earlier, this is 2018. We see things on the horizon that we know we have to get in place now. One idea that we have for the 2020 time is possibly tax-free, which would include working with our legislators, and it would be for Middlebury, and there are obviously parameters, things would have to be worked out. That's one program. Another is looking at public Wi-Fi for downtown, tourism, more ways to pull in for tourists. Free delivery is another thought that has been kicked around for businesses, especially with the rail project coming up and the difficulty for some people coming down. Or it's also when you consider the internet time now and people ordering online, it would give us another leg up there. We're talking about perhaps inviting people to come here for conferences during that 2020 period, hosting different state things, using our different, all our venues. Town Hall Theater is not as busy in the summer. There's a lot of different things, and we could work on that and encourage that we could bring some business to downtown and to all of Middlebury. This is really a community program, this whole thing, and also some flash sales. And these are just ideas that came out of the forums that were done in 2016. It's a start, And we know we have a lot going on, and we have more to look forward to. And we know we've got this 2019 and 2020 possible money, or we know we're going to be getting money, so we just don't know how much. So that's what we have planned for 2018. We have roller skates on. We're ready to go. And does anybody have any questions?
Questions of the board? Yes.
Fantastic, like really a thorough, wonderful job. I really love the way you've laid it out. The presentation is very clear. So I just wanted to ask about positioning Middlebury as a destination for outdoor recreation, and what you're envisioning in terms of promoting the mall trail, for example, on the brochure, and just a lot of our amenities related to that. And so I'm always thinking about bikes too, and bike routes, and if there's a way to work the map, in such a way that you could designate some of that, I think that would be really powerful. So that was one thing. And then we did this experiment with Vivid Mid pop-up demo projects with the planters. So when you're thinking of beautification, if we can do double duty, with planters at critical spots like we experimented with, especially around the triangle there, that might be something. I'm not sure where you're thinking about planters, but we could look at those visuals again and see if that makes sense. Seymour Street would be another one. I'm not sure you're looking at touching up Seymour Street, but it will be another gateway that we want to be looking at. So I was thinking of that, and I'm thinking of parking, of course. So there's a transportation task force, and Eric Davis and I are on that, and others, and I know he's representing Bill. Well, maybe you're neighbors together. With you guys, right? I know, but he knows the conversation. And he can be part of that. And he can share with you what we've been discussing in terms of initiatives there that should help this too, including the concept of a frequent shuttle, service shuttle. So I don't know that we have any wiggle room in budgeting to help support something like that, but I would ask you to look at that so that we can boost the frequency either of Actor itself or adding to the Actor fleet, or maybe it's a separate electric shuttle of some kind that's running like that, and doing a circuit. And I know that Eric has proposed that a very popular destination parking lot might be over by the college off Route 30, where the track and field is, where you could capture Porter Hospital as well as Middlebury College. So you want to get, high density employers to use those catchment parking lots. So I hope that you'll potentially consider that.
Yeah, I think that we would definitely we would certainly want to work with Actor and Jim in doing a little bit more research into how the shuttle that ran last year ended up working overall. I know that it was for 3 weeks. Was it all 3 weeks?
2 weeks.
6 weeks. So, I think that there's the desire on the part of everybody involved that we want to try to get fewer cars in the downtown. So how we go about doing that, I think all options at this point are on the table in terms of those discussions. So
yeah, and you saw in the town poll that we did do a little inquiry about people's tolerance for paid parking to turn over those lots, and these metered programs are not something that the town would have to pay for. It'll be set up for you, and that it pays for itself. And if that's a way to monitor those parking spots, we will have a parking attendant again. They'll be starting in April and run through the summer. So Chief Hanley, who's left,
May.
Told me
Starting in May.
Okay, all right. Well, training in April, starting in May. So that there'll be that enforcement. But meters are also good, so I know that we didn't get a high pulse on it in the survey, but maybe, I don't know, maybe they didn't. It's just something for us to keep asking.
yeah,
And recognize that we've got a few more years here. This is not, I'm promising you now, this will not be completed this year. Your suggestions, they will be considered and worked into it, but I think we are looking for the next couple of years too. We know what we have ahead of us, and it's really helpful to hear these things. I just didn't want you to get your hopes up.
and also every merchant that has has had some sort of feedback has referenced parking. So certainly it's something that is on our minds completely, and we'll keep exploring those options along with you guys.
Quick, you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, go you first.
Just a quick question. Great job, by the way. Thank
Thank you.
And I did talk to you today. The shopping rewards program, it says participating businesses. Are we going to reach out to all businesses and offer them the service?
Yes,
That'll be great if you do. I think most of the people don't know about it, except for the downtown folks.
yes,
So it will be good to reach out to the rest of the town.
yep.
About the storage, the buying of the equipment,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to worry about the storage, right?
The BMP rents a storage unit already for all the various things that
So
we
you
have.
already have that in the
So we
budget.
have it, and also the stage that I'm looking at actually folds down into a 4-foot by 4-foot block,
Okay.
which would not take up nearly as much storage space as we have available. So we would be happy to store it, and we have the capacity to do that.
And how much rent are you paying on, do you know?
$110 a month. Thanks, Megan.
I was just gonna offer you, if you wanna build a shed behind my store, let me know.
Thank you so much.
If you spend the money, I'll let you have it.
Oh, thank you.
Nick?
Well, excellent. One thing I was wondering if you'd consider is also publishing a lot of the promotional stuff in French. You know, we often overlook the fact that we are next to the largest French-speaking, or second largest French-speaking region in the world. You go to Burlington on the weekend, and it's little Montreal, and it's a lot of Bienvenue Québécois. And so, you know, brochures in the airport where signage is in French and English, you know, and various places like that. Let's have our French friends and visitors and relatives and whatever else, let's have them come a little further on down the road.
That's a great idea. We hadn't thought of that.
Merci. That's exactly right. Well, and in fact, actually, it's kind of, I don't know if it's an option, but if you go into Burlington on the weekends, there actually is a French-speaking kiosk. And they help direct visitors to various places, so I don't know if having maybe a member of the language school we could bring out a little hot chocolate hut. We'll paint it blue and white for the summer and staff it with.
Celebrate the Steel Day.
Right.
Any other questions? I guess pleasure of the board.
Well, it looks like the requested action is endorse the Neighbors Together Market Outreach Plan concept for 2018, so I would make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All in favor of endorsing the marketing outreach concept and authorizing them to develop and issue an RFP for programming resources, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that came from the BMP and Neighbors Together tonight, and a show of support. They all worked really hard on helping us to get here too, so thank you.
And a thanks to Jim.
Yes.
Jim?
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. It's great to have Neighbors Together and working with us on this project. So I'm here to talk tonight about the finance and maintenance agreement that you've seen an amendment to. Before I get to that, just a couple of quick updates on our rail and bridge project, which has been referenced a couple of times tonight. Number one, at your last select board meeting, you authorized Kathleen to sign the grant agreement that, in fact, provided the $75,000 funds that were talked about tonight, as well as provided funding for my position to the end of the project, pending the inclusion of suggestions by town council. Those have taken place. They've been accepted. The agreement's come back and been signed by Kathleen and now been countersigned by Secretary of Transportation Joe Flynn too. So that agreement is now final. I'll let you know that. Number two, a reminder that on March 27th, since we're getting close to boots on the ground for the 2018 construction season, On March 27th, the key players from the state and from VHB, the engineering firm, will be here to present the 2018 construction plan. You've seen during the course of this past year pieces of that. I think you have a general sense of what's involved, but the state will be here to present the details of the plan and to solicit, answer your questions as well. We've completed 2 storyboards that are being manufactured now. One tells the overall need for the project, and the other gives an overview, a visual overview of the 2018 construction season. And those are 4x5. They're sizable signs that will be, or storyboards that will be put in place next to the post office and the footbridge later this month too, as construction gets underway. So that'll be a very visual storytelling of the project for the community. The very first sign of the project will be some tree clearing that will take place in the rail corridor. So the state just today awarded JPC card of Barton with the contract to clear some trees in the railroad right-of-way. This is state-owned land. There are 3 areas where that'll take place. One is in Printer's Alley, and that's a thin strip of land between the concrete foundation and the railroad, the actual rail line. Number 2 will be in the rail cut between the 2 bridges. The trees will be taken down there as well. And number 3 will be along the bank of Otter Creek, between Cross Street Bridge and the Patel Block parking lot. All 3 of these are to pave the way for the work that will take place this year in the drainage system and the temporary access road. So again, we're looking at a select number of trees that will be cut down in the Printer's Alley, in the rail cut between the 2 bridges, and along Otter Creek. The stumps will be left in place to manage soil erosion until the time that they need to be taken out, and that work will begin on Monday of next week. There'll be some mobilization during the week here. So I've prepared a blog entry for the community that I'll release tomorrow morning that has some of the details that I've shared with you tonight, but I wanted to let you know that that'll be the first visible sign to the community that the work is getting underway here. Okay. So, with that in mind, we'll move on to the finance and maintenance agreement. This is simply an amendment. A little bit of background. In November of 2016, the state agency of transportation and the town signed an agreement that effectively transitioned ownership of the rail and bridge project from the town. It had been a municipally managed project to the state. Okay, so included in that agreement was the town's obligation to contribute $500,000 to the project. That obligation had been entered into as a result of a bond approval vote that was taken in March of 2014, and the town voters approved the $500,000 investment in the project. As conversations took place this past fall between the town and the executive team at the Agency of Transportation, the Secretary of Transportation proposed that the state forgive that $500,000 with the idea that perhaps that money could be used in other ways to invest in the town, other capital improvement projects, to finish the work downtown and so forth. So, with no strings attached, the Secretary of Transportation asked that the legal document be drawn up that would essentially just forgive that $500,000. So that $500,000 doesn't exist. It was to be bonded, but it does give the Select Board in the months ahead perhaps an opportunity to think about to revisit the notion of that kind of money and how it might be used downtown. So what you're being asked to do tonight is simply to authorize Kathleen to sign the amendment, and the amendment simply, again, forgives the town's obligation to contribute $500,000 to the Rail and Bridge project.
Wait a second, let me just give you a little bit of kind of where we're heading with this, some of the thought. The bond vote originally was to be reduced by any grants or any other funds that we got. So this is in accord with really what the intent was at the time. It gives us some latitude to have the infrastructure committee do a deep dive into what are the infrastructure improvements that are needed within that downtown area as part of, that might be efficient to be done as part of the rail project. Already, there's about $350,000 of work that needs to be done by the town there that was not part of this 500,000. It looks like our share of that they may be able to cost share that with us, but that's something, again, further discovery is necessary. So I would propose that we approve this, but continue to drive on and challenge the infrastructure committee to really take a look at that downtown and see what are the things that maybe we should be doing as a part of this and what that budget might look like. And we might bring that back to the voters and seek a replacement bond that would get this all done at the same time. It would be for a different purpose, so we probably, I think, would be appropriate to take it back to the voters. But we have now forgiven that 500,000 if we approve this. So that would be kind of the process that I would be looking for us to follow. It would be working on it throughout the next, months and year or whatever. That we don't really have a timeline other than we would need to make those decisions in a timely enough manner that they fit into the flow of the project if there's things that we would want to do in the downtown at that time. So that's kind of my thoughts that how we would go about this. It would be a multi-step process, and it would come back to the select board. But we'd have the group that works with that really take a look at it and prioritize.
Given that, and that makes a lot of sense, I don't recall in any time with the engineering team or with V-Trans as far as what would be the optimal time for them to have information on for what we would like to do in additional. Thinking about it, the most likely the least expensive way to do this additional work is while we already have crews there.
Right.
So effectively roll those crews over to handle the other work, and there's some optimization that can happen of, you're laying some curb and you lay some more. So, do you recall, has there been any discussion about what kind of timeline they would need this information?
Well, there's two questions there, I guess. One is, when would the work ideally take place? And that would probably be fall of 2020 and spring of 2021.
That's what I would expect, yeah.
Right, the kind of final cleanup work.
Right.
In terms of when it needs to be planned, this would be part of the main project. The 2018 season is kind of early work package 2, followed by the main contract, which will span 2019 and 2020.
Right.
But this really sits outside of any contract between the state and Kubricki, so I would think that any discussions with Kubricki could take place at any time it's convenient for the town.
And Nick, I would really like to kick that back to the infrastructure committee, because the date you just gave would be more like street level things, but
Right.
there may be things that are down in would be you would want to do during maybe 2019 ahead of it, of the big dig, and so it really is is something that needs to be looked into in depth.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
You can go first.
So are they still gonna cap the tunnel?
Yes.
Because
Yes,
I thought that was what the.
that was, but
the
we
money
have an
was
agreement with
specifically-
them. It does not
They're
change.
still gonna do
Yeah.
the work that money
But
was
the
supposed
scope
to
of
cover.
work hasn't changed, and it's interesting, if you read the bond vote, it had nothing to do with the tunnel. It was just contributing $500,000. Over time, it evolved into, at least the state's expectation, that $500,000 had to do with the grade change for the tunnel. But anyhow, the state's commitment is absolutely to the tunnel.
And it doesn't impact, we still have the same agreement where they come to us and give us time to respond and everything. The amendment just changes the dollar figure of the agreement. It doesn't change anything else.
Yeah, that's all.
So does this help us with planning the Merchants Row lands or layout and parking configuration too, or are we just, and I'm thinking about where we may have actor buses over there, and if this is the time to start thinking about that too. I know we have a lot of difficulty right now with where the bus stops are, and so I know if they could go back on Merchants Row, that would solve a lot, and I'm just wondering at what point that kind of coincides with
Yeah, this is,
conversation.
we're mixing apples and oranges,
Okay.
and I'm not sure that's a big discussion where actor moves.
Yeah. If, the question of when will the state be finalizing its plan for Merchants Row, if you want to generalize the question like that, would be later this year as they begin the contract for Kubricki for the main project.
Well, it does really start to put the criticality of, put the burden on the infrastructure committee, but to identify those things that we want so that the engineering can be finalized. Sounds like an opportunity to actually get some pretty good bargain engineering to help us with our long-term goal.
Lindsay has a
Quick thing. You had mentioned you thought there were $350,000 worth of stuff. So is this something the committee has already, are there things that the committee has already identified
These are
downtown?
yes, these are things that the infrastructure committee has already identified.
Okay.
Needs that are gonna be done concurrent with the project.
Okay, but they're already identified and Kubricki already knows about them.
Yes.
Okay, but we could potentially work that in. I just want to be sure I'm understanding what's happening.
Yeah,
So-
I appreciate the question.
So that would be something we could look at with the bond that
Right.
Kubricki could do concurrently.
Right.
Okay, just making sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
So,
Questions?
Chris,
Are the trees all marked that they're taking down?
I think most of them have been marked, yeah, they've been evaluated, and marked by the VHB.
So they're marked out there now, so probably people walk on.
They're everything that's more than a certain diameter. I'd have to let you know what that diameter is, but I'm not sure that every single one has been marked. Kind of the edges of them have been marked.
So you don't think there's flagging on each one that's coming down?
I don't think so. I walked it on Monday as a pre-bid contract meeting. It didn't look like individual trees have been marked, but kind of the perimeter of both of them have been marked, and the specs specify a certain diameter. There's a lot of smaller trees in there that will stay there.
yes, sir.
This is for Jim mainly, the cutting down of the trees, are the drainage, the existing drains into the cut flagged or going to be flagged so they don't get damaged during this tree removal?
Well, they know where yours is.
There are a couple in there.
Yeah. Well, they know where the one is, so maybe we could.
There are actually two of ours in there that, perimeter drains. One's from the basin, one's from the surround. And I think the town has others that go in there too, possibly.
Well, they've got, I'm sure the engineers have marked up where the town lines are, but I'll double check on that to make sure. Again, they're just taking down, they're leaving about 2 feet of stump, so they're not going down into the soil. That's the plan.
Pleasure on the Amendment 2.
I'll move to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign Amendment Number 2 to the VTrans Finance and Maintenance Agreement for Bridge and Rail Project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments on it? Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you
Joe.
very much.
Dan, I believe this is you. Is this you?
What about the gross solar?
Yeah.
Did that get changed?
Who's,
Are we skipping that?
maybe it's not, maybe it's no, well, gross solar is not you. Maybe Kathleen is gonna walk us through this. It's about, I didn't see Jim Carroll here.
I don't know. Just a second.
Sure.
Because I'm staying for the meeting.
Okay, text Chris. Sorry about that. We have a security issue. Minor security issue that's well in hand now. So Grow Solar, as you saw in your packet, Attorney Jim Carroll, who is reviewing this on behalf of the town, has recommended that while Grow Solar has done a really nice job of reaching out to adjacent property owners, the Select Board and the Planning Commission, that we should have a well-advertised public hearing on it, just so that everyone has ample opportunity to tell the board if they have any concerns, because this is a very large project.
And we do that at the next select board meeting?
That's what we're suggesting.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I understand.
That, I would support that.
Want
yeah.
to make the motion then?
So I'll move that we conduct a public hearing to take testimony at our next select board meeting, March 27th. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. At 8 o'clock on the proposed Grow Solar project.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on it? Anyone? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
And before we move on, I'll just comment that Dan Werner, Bill Kernan from Public Works, and Jennifer Murray have gone through the agreement and made some recommendations to Jim for him to incorporate into the MOU, having to do with wildlife corridors and the preservation of the town's right-of-way.
Okay. They seem very amenable to working things out.
Okay, good. Now, Dan, if you and Heather would like to take us through the,
Do you want to take the general discussion and I'll do the bid, or what do you, what's your
Sure,
pleasure?
I will do whatever you think best. So, the infrastructure committee reviewed, Dan's recommendation, on the well monitoring improvement project. Actually, it was, Aldridge and Elliott bid analysis that identified, and recommended low bidder Champlain Construction. There were 2 bids, and if you will recall, we had put this out to bid about this time or about last summer.
Yeah,
right?
it was early spring, I think
Yeah.
it was, and let me just take it from here.
Yes,
Yeah, sure.
yes.
Okay, so,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
last year we had one bidder, and it was $255,000, and we thought it was a little high, and we said, let's wait on this, see if we can get more bidders interested. So this time, we also ran into a snag with V-Trans. The local V-Trans person permittee okayed the project to locate the building in their right-of-way in the clear zone, and then administratively it was nixed, and so we had to start over with finding a different spot around the Foster's Field. So anyway, that's been straightened out. So anyway, this time we had 2 bids, one from Champlain Construction, the other from Parker. Champlain's bid was $227,582.02. Parker's bid was $287,089.90. The bid tab has been reviewed by Aldridge and Elliott, and they are recommending to us to award the bid to Champlain Construction for the $227,582.02. and the project will have a contract signing next week. And when the ground gets ready to go, they'll be ready to go. Bonds have to be secured and so on and so forth, so, super.
So the infrastructure committee accepted A&E's recommendation and made the motion to support the recommendation.
So you want to
So-
make a motion
Sure.
for the select board?
I'll make a motion toward the contract to low bidder Champlain Construction for the well monitoring improvements project for a total cost of $227,582.02.
Seconded?
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Yes.
So this would be ongoing equipment, right? It's not just like, right?
This is state mandated.
State mandated. So
Equipment monitoring.
is there an electric cost related to this?
There's two separate monitoring buildings. They're roughly 8 feet by 8 feet square. And so they would have heating costs, which would probably be electric, and, or which will be electric. And the monitoring equipment is, takes a sample every part of a minute, seconds, whatever. So you have small electrical costs to run the little monitoring pumps.
But it's going 24/7. Now, I'm only saying that because one of our largest electric expenses are our pumps, you know, and our wells, and this is just something to anticipate in our budget. And I don't know how much, you know, we need to anticipate this in our budget, but that's what I was trying to get at,
Yeah.
you know. And is there anything that we can do to manage that? But I guess not, aside from finding renewable energy sources that could offset it, you know, which we
Right.
hope to do.
Right. Yeah, these are 6-inch wall, I think they're 6-inch walls, insulated walls, you know, for very small buildings. It's mostly electronic equipment, very
Yeah.
low cost. There's not big pumps, there's not motors.
Yeah, and that's just looking at water
Mounted on the
quality,
wall kind of things,
yeah. So
radio.
what's the process for inspecting the pumps themselves to see if they're functioning correctly or not? Do you just see that there's a spike in electric as an indicator, or is there,
You mean at our well pump houses?
yes,
Well, they're visited daily,
daily?
yeah.
Mhm.
And they record the usage and the hours and so on and so forth.
There is also telemetry on all those.
Right. Yeah.
That monitors
Mhm.
pumping and service and,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Anyway, I was just wondering, you know, what the incidental cost might be, if it's incidental.
I don't think I don't think we anticipate that it will be a significant increase in cost. There will be some increase. But I suppose at some point, maybe the Energy Committee could look at solar panels for operating those buildings, but it hadn't been something that I really kind of considered, so.
Well, I guess with anything, you have to look at economies of scale. Is it better to have a large array like we just talked about?
That's what I
Or
was
do-
gonna
or
say,
do we
more
s-
that.
Or do we stick
um,
little solar panels all over the place and buildings?
I know we can, yeah,
Well, your biggest energy draw is gonna be your heating. I mean, it's
Right.
gonna be low voltage monitoring equipment, which
Right.
is nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that literally is so minuscule, so it's a tight envelope that gives us the payback on the energy. Once that happens, you're not gonna open a door that often, so it's gonna be it's an oversized thermos bottle.
yeah. No, I see it's a small amount of energy relative to other things. It just made me think of the town's electric expense and how we want to manage it. So that's all.
We're kind of waiting for technology to catch up.
With what?
Waiting for motor technologies to catch up and control technologies.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve Champlain Construction Company and as awarding the contract to low bidder Champlain Construction Company. If there are no other questions, we'll vote on it. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Thanks, Dan.
Sure, you're welcome.
Do we have something else?
Well, we talked about the draft scope of services for the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, okay.
And so the engineer, Tata and Howard, two representatives, were here to talk to the infrastructure committee about a scope of services for the evaluation of the wastewater plant. And so there was one item I think that the infrastructure committee wanted to look at a little closer, and that was possibility of, is there enough waste for methane generation from anaerobic digestion of the sludge? So they will certainly look at that. And so the next step is they're going to come back to us with a cost proposal for conducting that evaluation. And so then we'll bring that back through the infrastructure committee and then to you to approve that.
Right, good.
So that's making progress on that.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Yep.
So can I make a request while Dan is right here?
Absolutely.
Given the prior conversation about work related to bridge in town and possible upcoming infrastructure, I feel like Dan has a pretty full plate right now, so of projects that we've already kind of approved and talked about, and maybe he could talk more on that, but I'm just wondering I just want to make sure we can fit that in, that you think we can manage it with all the other stuff that we already have going, the priorities we already have identified, so I don't, I want to do it, I guess I want to be conscious of your time, and if we need to consider some consultant time or, because I don't want to delay the Exchange Street, Route 7 South water main project. There are other big things that are really time sensitive that, and at the same time, if we have an opportunity downtown, I want to take advantage of that, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we discussed months ago at the infrastructure committee about tying some of the sidewalk areas that are outside the scope of that work. In other words, coming this way towards the bridge, the granite curbing we talked about. There is some sidewalk work needed in the green along the granite bollard fence. We still have to talk a little bit more about the water main issue. Top of my head, the bollard lighting that's in the green, those 4-foot things that nobody notices because they don't work very well, as far as light output, is something maybe we could consider. They've always been kind of a subpar lighting on the path. And then there's also a sidewalk that people probably could use on the side of the gazebo, between the church and the gazebo. A lot of people walk that way. There's no sidewalk there. That's just an option to kick around. We can talk about.
So just let us know as we
Yeah.
get in that conversation, your time constraints and fitting that in, I guess.
Okay, well, we'll be
'Cause
in touch, and we're aware there's a lot of moving pieces going on right now. And I think what we're looking more from the infrastructure to start the discussion is what is appropriate to do at this time, and then,
Right.
Not to go into too deep a dive, but to basically make a list. What are the things that would be appropriate to have, and then do we want to entertain that? Because it might be the type of thing where we go to Wayne and we say, Wayne, can you just give us an add-in and give us a bill what that would cost?
Right.
And so that it doesn't take a lot of your staff time.
Right.
So I think we got to just start with a list,
Mm-hmm.
and then.
Okay, well, it might get long.
I know it was, 2 million last time when we had to pare it down, so I get it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
So, I think it was our last meeting, we had a request from those that live out by the airport to discuss, and we didn't feel we had received an answer that we were happy with from the Agency of Transportation Aviation Division on Forest Ridge Drive tree removal. And so we asked Kathleen to draft a letter for us to sign, and that letter to V-Trans is in the packet, and it's to Dan DeLabriere, who's the Bureau Director. It says, "Dear Dan, we write with regard to last year's tree cutting on Forest Ridge Drive as necessitated for the runway improvement project at the Middlebury State Airport. As you know, the town's authorization to remove trees in the right-of-way of Forest Ridge Drive and Schoolhouse Hill Road was conditioned upon V-Trans' commitment to minimize any resulting disruption to the understory in order to reduce the amount of time needed for regeneration of the vegetation, which serves as a noise and dust barrier and helps to stabilize the gravel bank. In addition, V-Trans was asked to leave tree stumps in place, which also helps to stabilize the bank. As neither condition was met, we respectfully request the Vermont Agency of Transportation plant low-growing trees along the bank to restore the dust and noise barrier, as well as stabilize the slope of the gravel bank. The town's tree warden, Chris Zioli, has identified 4 varieties of low-growing trees for your consideration for planting, and we have attached information about each variety for your reference. Chris Zioli and Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey are available to meet at your convenience to discuss the quantity and placement of the trees to address our concerns. Chris's contact information, it goes on to give Chris and Kathleen's contact information. Thank you for your consideration of our request. Please do not hesitate to contact us to discuss this request in greater detail, signed by the Middlebury Select Board. So I would be seeking support to sign that.
Just a quick question about the trees you selected, the 4 different trees. Those are all native, right? Native trees? No.
No, my criteria was for ease of bare root planting, which surprisingly, it's not that easy to bare root a lot of trees.
Yeah.
So bare root planting, and because that whole hillside is very sandy and steep, drought tolerant,
Okay.
and a height restriction, and that was it. Yeah.
But they're all things that won't be invasive here.
No, they're non-invasives.
I'm
No,
assuming,
no,
yeah.
no.
And there's no native substitute for these?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't say absolutely not, but discussion with someone at Cornell, that's what I came up with them.
But they won't grow to such a height one day that in 20 years, we're back to the same
30
situation.
feet, I think, is the
So
tallest.
we don't have to
Yeah.
create an impact on the flight rate, okay? Well,
Although actually I see one now 30 to 70. Yeah.
Well, they're not gonna plant something that grows to 70,
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
need to give them some
Yeah.
varieties that are gonna stay underneath what they
But the
consider
other-
the.
right.
The other is, 20 to 40,
Well, it gives them food for thought.
35 to 45.
I see one of them says native to Iran, so I don't know how he got here.
Yeah, and we're getting, it's not easy finding native trees that are pest resistant, soil compaction resistant.
Wow.
We're narrowing down our scope of possibilities.
Are these things that have already been cultivated here? You know?
Again, I was discussing this with someone who knows more than me.
Okay, you were relying on there.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
Just curious, that's fine.
Well, it's a letter in the right direction to put this thing to rest. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's a well-written letter. It gets right to the point in a professional, courteous way.
I just don't want to see more equipment going up there to plant, 4-inch diameter,
Right.
Right.
2-foot root ball trees.
Right.
Thank you.
And I mean, what would be nice is to, involve school kids or any, get some kind of public to help out planting.
If they're willing to buy, if it comes back and they're willing to buy the trees, you think we could get it planted with the
I would
public
hope
planting?
we could coordinate, I mean, if nothing else, I'll get up there and plant them.
Yeah.
I'll do it. But, yeah, I would like to think that.
So you think
the
that's
town
something
could-
we can offer?
Yes, I
Okay.
think that is possible.
Reasonable? Okay.
Reasonable.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just would like it that they would take some responsibility for their,
Roger.
Got it, okay.
So if everybody's okay with that, we'll sign that this evening.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
So town meeting follow-up, Laura.
Well, you saw that we've already compiled the results from the town meeting poll, which included feedback on how town meeting felt for people. And I think, well, you saw that generally people were favorable about the location at Mary Hogan School. Certainly, we have some refining we can do around chairs and direction for parking and publicizing the social hour. So people like the social hour, so they thought that was a good addition. They just would like to know about it before they come. So they were pleasantly surprised, and they really appreciated the effort of Mesa and the presence of Mesa. And a lot of them talked about how they hadn't been at Mary Hogan for a long time, if at all, so it was good for them to get some connection with the elementary school again, so that was pretty good. I'm sure you had your own impressions. I felt it went really well, and I liked that we weren't up on a stage and that we were really part of the meeting, that it was the town's meeting, and I thought it was conducted very well. I thought, people weren't finished with the local option tax discussion, and we know that, and we'll continue to talk about that, the management of the surplus. And the survey shows us that there is general support for the direction that we were going in with dedicating some of the surplus for capital improvement. So I could go on, because we could spend a whole rest of the hour just talking about the survey, and maybe over the course of the next meetings, we can use it as a reference for talking about other issues as they come before us. Oh, and by the way, what's that? Yes, definitely join us in the conversation. So we just want to thank those that are watching, or that read the notes, that we had 250 plus respondents to the survey. So that was great that people took the time to complete that and give us their feedback. We appreciate it.
Can I?
Please.
So I want to say thank you to Laura for spearheading this polling and doing this survey, because I think look at all the responses we got this year. So great job, Laura. Thank you. And I really liked the way the meeting went, and got a lot of feedback kind of after the fact. And the advertising of the social hour probably fell off my radar a little bit. I think I had tended to put something on Front Porch Forum and forgot, so that, learning from me and kind of spearheading that whole part of it. So I think everybody did a great job, and there was a lot of conversation. One comment I did hear from a couple different people was they would like more opportunity for conversation and debate, which I don't know how we work in without the meeting getting long on a Monday night when everybody's worked. And
Chaotic.
And what I'd like to hope is to encourage people to come here when we're meeting during the year somehow, and ask them to debate and converse with us throughout the year, so that we're not all there till 11 o'clock on a Monday night, so.
As has happened a few times.
Yes.
I think it went very well. This is my first town meeting, so it was packed. That was good. I I did make some notes. The MCTV could have been placed a little bit differently because they were on the side, and when they were telecasting, it was mostly whoever sitting on my left side was not seen very well. I noticed they could have been in the middle of the row or something. That was one thing I observed. I agree with everything you said. Yeah, that's the only thing I noticed about the MCTV. They could have been placed better, I think. And another thing, sorry. I don't know, a lot of people have been complaining that they don't know where the town meeting was. They don't know we had the polling here. People were coming to us outside and say, oh, we went to the high school and we went to the gym and we didn't know. And I know we had postcards.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we are not doing a better job communicating with people, or it's not one or two, several people came to us.
We're still fairly new in the new locations, so as we get established over time, and we'll advertise more next year.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it was out in quite a few places.
Yeah.
Just depending on where people are looking. I mean, it was certainly in the warning, it was on the postcard, it was on the website,
It went out in the email.
the blast.
I mean, I think to some extent, people have to be responsible for
I know.
knowing where they need to be when they need to be there,
Yeah,
so.
or for us to figure out, like, where are they looking that they're expecting to see it and they're not.
Right. And anytime you change things,
Yeah, it
Yeah.
takes a while for them to get used to it.
I think Kathleen made a good point there. The only thought I might have is like Cornwall does a nice job whenever you go out 30, putting their sandwich board out for like a week ahead of time. How long was our sandwich board out? We might put it out earlier just to try to.
Right, last year, we advertised that it was going to be at the high school. This year, we were advertising early voting.
Early voting, yeah.
Okay. So it might just be something that we could do to help.
Yeah, the more signage, the better.
Yeah. But I do think
we should
it's going to
ask,
take a little getting used to.
Yeah.
maybe we should ask Dan to rent us one of those construction light-up signs.
Apparently
Or
we can't.
about-
Banner in the middle of Main Street.
The town has its own construction sign, and the state asked us not to stop using it to advertise the Chili Fest, et
Yeah.
cetera.
Only to be used for the highway purposes, yeah.
Well, maybe we'll just have to break that rule a little bit around town meeting.
Well, maybe
And the
there's a
governor,
variation.
the governor did a
Detour
great
into
job.
Mary Hogan parking lot,
Yeah.
the evening of the town meeting.
I have a few comments in terms of
Please.
debriefing and I think wanted us to keep in mind, thinking about if there are other spaces. I think the Mary Hogan worked quite well. It is fairly labor intensive, and I'm a little concerned just in terms of if we'd had the snowstorms after town meeting that we were getting, if we would have had DPW to help, we would have had a really hard time setting up, hooking up chairs, getting there set up and all that if we didn't have DPW. So if there is a storm and DPW is not available, then I'm thinking there's select board, JPs, whatever, have to be willing to kind of jump in and make this happen as well. So I just wanted to point that out.
I was all ready to go and got there at 10 after 3 and it was all set up and I was like, wow.
Yeah, we were doing good. I was a little concerned too about the size. I think Heather was kind of showing me where, like the gymnasium part that we were in, that was kind of blocked off for the meeting, and she was kind of checking out how far over could we go into the cafeteria there and still be able to see, which I'm thinking, I'm not sure how many chairs were there, but I thought we had borrowed 150 of those small wooden ones from the college. So I was kind of doing a count just based on, okay, there's 150 of those, and there's these, so I was thinking we had about 220 set up for the meeting, and we had about 50 behind the tables for additional spectators. I found it to be incredibly full, incredibly tight, and the college chairs are very small.
Yeah.
And there was actually only 160 people that checked in. So I know we could spread out a little more, but we definitely have to think in terms of how can everybody see and how can we have space for everyone. And if there is anything about comfort, I think the college chairs are the biggest complaint in terms of that they are so small. They're hard, they're very, very small. And the last time, like this, we checked in 162 people. Last year, we checked in 211. The year before that, we checked in 234. I like to set up for around 250 and then have the additional space of at least space for 50 that are non-voters. So, so just in terms of if we're going to use that space again, how we can maybe set it up a little better so that we're spread out, but people doing check-in can still take part in the meeting, and that we don't encroach too much on if you're going to have a social hour.
Did you get a sense of adequacy of parking?
Yeah, I was wondering about that too. Or the feedback I heard was it's dark,
It's very dark there. That was another comment, so I don't know if there's something that we could do to bring more lighting there, but basically the front of the school is very, very dark, and the parking is kind of far away.
and there was a big puddle on.
Yeah, and if there's storms, I mean, I think we need to think about that. Certainly, I think there's things we need to figure out better about the microphones and having more of them and making sure that that's
Working
happening.
for MCTV, yeah, picking it up.
MCTV did mention to me that they kind of get worried at times that they might run out of film space, or however they do it, that they have so much space. And so wondering if we could choreograph a little better so that we're moving things kind of along. And one thing I pointed out to Kathleen, it's sort of, we kind of gone in and we'd set up and we put the podium in one place, and I wasn't there when the table went in on the end, but there was the table with the podium, and then Kathleen was way down on the other end, and she really does get called on a lot to answer. So those are just things to think about in terms of how much is somebody going to have to move to kind of choreograph this. Because I also want to echo that I think that people, what I was feeling is that people were getting up, and I had the feeling that they were really asking, what is procedure, and what can I do, and what's allowed? And as far as any running of the meeting or whatever, I don't think we conveyed that very well to the public, kind of what their rights are, what a process is, the fact that they can make amendments. Mostly, I feel the board has really discussed things really well. You're really clear about what you're presenting and what you would like the voters to do. So I think if the voters knew what the process was and what they had the right to do, even if amendments were proposed, I think you have very good presentations and arguments for why you would like to see things go a certain way, and I think lots of times the voters really back you. But then again, if they didn't, it would be the voters wanting to go a different direction.
So some other towns do distribute like rules of procedures and what is available at town meetings. So we could do that on the backside of the warning.
Well, I was going to mention that I actually send out something, it's called The Meeting Will Come to Order, and when new people come to town, like, well, right now it's not every new person, but it's new homeowners, people who buy homes, and they move into town, part of our welcome packet is that kind of the meeting will come to order, and it kind of outlines procedures, and so I'm thinking maybe I could do a better job of kind of getting that out around town meeting time, but I would think the board would also need to be very aware of that and kind of buy into that. It would probably create some more discussion, but I think people would be more satisfied about the discussions that they are having. So
Could we put it on the website?
we could probably put that on the website, yeah, and that'd be,
Voters or, you know,
Yep.
citizens' right to
and I
say
could,
they-
yeah, I could certainly have that in, under my department
Yeah.
anyway, all the time, and I think Chris has a section there just for kind of,
There is like Citizens
Information
Guide to
center.
Government.
Yeah.
That's on the homepage that you can click on. I'm not sure how much of that is in there, but
Okay.
probably. I haven't scanned it recently.
so I did want to say that I agree, I thought people really enjoyed the social hour, and I think Mesa did a fantastic job setting something up, and that was really nice of them to do it, and I hope we're going to send them some sort of thank you. And overall, I thought the screen worked much better, and the PowerPoint presentation seemed to be clearer, and people were able to see that, and so, but, yeah, I think if we could all be more involved together in terms of kind of that setup and how things flow and.
So, Ann, you know, we did have a few respondents that wondered about being at other gyms, you know, and I'm trying to remember what brought us to Mary Hogan versus the high school. And did they have a conflict with their schedule, or what was the obstacle over there?
High school has a lot going on, and to get into their
Okay,
gym.
that was the obstacle, right?
Very
That's sort of what I'm remembering. It was the scheduling
And then
impossibility.
we have a gym, it's very
Yeah.
busy as well.
Uh-huh.
At this point, we're not set up very well for MCTV in our gym, and wherever we go in
That
the
was
sense
one
a
of the
gym.
requirements, was a live feed.
Yeah,
What's that?
that was the other
Yeah, I
thing.
think
Yeah.
MCT.
Yeah,
was the main-
absolutely, yeah. And we're not set up for that at all,
So the middle school doesn't have a live feed either, then, I don't know.
no, so,
And I'm just thinking of a site that would still provide for the gym that they seem to like, so that they have access to microphones, but, and might have better lit parking and more parking.
yeah. I
Like, so
think-
would the middle school
I
be
don't
something?
know what you can do
to-
about like temporary lighting or whatever, but the lighting is definitely very poor at Mary Hogan.
Yeah, so, I mean, to your point about making sure that people can see, if we were to go back to Mary Hogan, would you lay it out in a different direction?
I think I would want to lay it out a little differently because, as I say, when I'm laying it out, I like to have at least 250 chairs set, and I like to have more chairs available to
Yeah.
pull in. And just how packed it felt, and we only checked in 162, I thought we couldn't have had 150 of those wooden chairs. I mean, it's, just doesn't seem logical, so.
Well, do you have a sense of the number of early voters that we had this year? Is it
Yeah,
is it
we had
trending
a bit
up?
over 200
Okay, so,
voters.
Is that more or less than typical?
I would say early, it's probably fairly average for
Average.
town meeting. We overall had more voters, around 700 to 800 is pretty average total, and we had
Over 1,000, yeah.
1169.
Yeah.
so we had a very
So
good
that was
turnout.
higher. I mean, we definitely had the contested races, and people were interested, and
Mhm.
Just curious why, maybe because it wasn't a general election year or something, I don't know.
oh,
It
yeah,
did-
and like the off years, like, yeah, like if it was a presidential year, we would be having a presidential primary at town meeting as well. and
Yeah,
that
I'm just
would have
trying to
huge
figure out
turnout.
why we didn't have as much interest as we've had in the past 2 years.
Oh, at
It's
the
fallen
actual
off.
meeting.
Just, yeah,
Well,
maybe
that too,
they're
yeah.
not as tied in or something, I don't know.
Well, there weren't,
There weren't any big issues
weren't-
on the,
yeah, big issues or articles
Yeah.
to be voted on.
Could be.
Other than the typical, you know, like our budget and our equipment purchase and when taxes will be due and
yeah.
Mhm.
things like that. So I think the local option tax was probably the most interesting conversation to people, but even there, I'm not sure people tuned into it until really late in the game,
Yeah.
so.
I would just hope it wasn't because of us bouncing locations and stuff and people not finding us or lack of parking or, you know.
Yeah.
I would hope it would be because they didn't intend to come versus they wanted to come but didn't like the locale or, I don't know.
Right, I think if.
I
yeah.
think we need to try it another year and just see where it goes.
Mhm, yeah.
Mm.
As I say, if we could work on some of the, I mean, I would actually like to have bigger chairs there, but that means we definitely need to take up more of the space to have
Yeah.
We would have to,
chairs.
could we pivot it and turn it the other way?
I'm thinking we could do
I mean,
something.
that's usually what they do for their concerts when they have, or big, right?
Kind of
You
at an
kids,
angle?
You've seen them, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Were we allowed to use
Well,
the
not
other
even
entrance?
necessarily at an angle, but having the stage, kind of where the other entrance is, so that it goes all the way back to the end of like
Right,
the
you won't have an
cafeteria.
elevated screen the way we do by putting it on the stage, but you'll have more volume for chairs.
Yeah,
Can we use the other entrance?
yeah, we could use
Oh, we
either
could-
entrance,
okay,
yeah.
We just chose that one.
Yeah,
Because if we had people coming in one way.
Yeah.
and just
we need
flowing
enough
in one
place to
direction.
line
Right.
people up, but,
Yeah,
Let's see.
So-
Okay, I'm gonna need to move this along unless we have some,
can I just ask one quick question?
sure.
What do we, can I, or how does it work to find out what, MCTV would need installed to do a live
For a
feed at
live
another
feed.
gym? Like, what do they need and how much it costs? Should I follow up with them? Can I do that? Okay.
yeah, because I know they set up kind of, in response to Fahad, kind of where they do set up, because it's very close to that room where they
Yep.
can connect. And there, the equipment is right in that closet area.
Right, I'm just curious, what would be the cost to install what we need in our town gym for, you know, in the recreation center?
Mhm.
So I'll ask.
We'll need to establish a liaison, probably, that's one of the positions that Susan was doing, so.
I'm attending the meeting tomorrow at MCTV, so I
Oh.
can ask.
Could you ask that question
Sure.
for us?
Yep.
Is there anything that you thought I could have done differently?
Well, was there a time limit for getting out that was, that is also an aspect of what we have to
For the
manage
next morning?
by being at Mary Hogan?
Yeah, they definitely wanted us out and cleared out by 8:30 in the morning.
Oh, 8:30
Which is
in the morning.
typically fine, and the only issue I would see in kind of trying to schedule that is if it's stormy.
Mhm.
Yeah. And as New Hampshire is finding out, it's the same in Vermont. There is no
Mhm.
statute or anything, there's no provision for canceling or postponing town meeting.
Okay.
So, can I take some of your stuff?
Okay,
Yeah, you did. Well, it's actually hers.
a lot of good input there. Approval of check warrants.
Yes, I did the check reviews today. Everything is in good order. I also wanted to take this time to thank Jackie and her crew. They do a great job, makes my life easier checking those things. So I would like to move to approve expenditures in the amount of $391,134.18, out of which accounts payable goes to $290,356.10, and payroll goes to $100,778.08.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Kathleen?
Briefly, just want to announce that a public meeting to discuss the draft plans for the East Middlebury Flood Resiliency Project will be held on Monday, March 19th, at the Methodist Church in East Middlebury at 7 p.m. Design plans and the project narrative are available on the town's website, townofmiddlebury.org, and we've set up a special project page right underneath the Residents tab.
Thank you, Kathleen. Board member concerns? Nick?
One is, I want to thank the Mary Hogan people. I completely forgot about Mesa because our kids haven't been there for a while, but it was good to see that familiar name. But it was a fantastic job, so thanks for setting up. I think like all of us, we're thrilled to hear that our colleague Victor is getting back to health. When he called actually my house Sunday, and I was in another room, and when Diane called out and said that he was on the phone, it was a wonderful call to have. And of course, I almost broke my leg rushing to the phone because I wanted to talk to him. I was just eager to have him back. The other thing was, it was very interesting with the conversation on the local option tax, which is, sort of a conversation we've ancillary been talking about having. And it seems to me that maybe a little bit of a shift in how we could do some of our meetings is periodically, rather than go through the normal format that we do, we have an in-depth topic of discussion where we announce this, we have those who are interested to come and participate, but we get into some good dialogue on these items. And I don't have any set time, whether we do it quarterly or semi-annually, but start to come up with a list of those things that we just don't seem to quite have the chance to have a good conversation with during our normal meetings, because there's so much else to do. So it's I would put the local option tax as a first topic of discussion at some point, because you know, many of the topics we've had discussed here tonight, you know, the work that we're tasking the infrastructure committee to do, well, maybe there's some funding coming through that, and another avenue. So that's just a thought that I've had for a while, and it'd be nice to consider that.
I agree, but it is challenging. I don't know, Kathleen. I mean, because there's so much legal business we have to conduct. Can we do any of the?
Well, I think that starting out with the local option tax would be great if we could have the infrastructure committee's recommendations on capital improvements and what their recommendation particularly is for tapping the local option tax. And then even before we get into the general fund budget, have a public meeting where the proposal is discussed and vetted. So you know going in that that's well accepted.
Yeah, no, I agree, but like, I know that there's often a lot of like signage and approving that we have to do. I don't know if there's any way that we can fast track things a bit more. I don't know, or can we sign things in the office, you know, like, so that we're not having to do everything in the meeting, although there's expediency here. Or maybe it's required because there has to be discussion. So, I don't know, you know, like, it's a challenge, and I think you're right, it's something that we could look at in our board meeting.
Okay. Lindsay?
I don't have anything, but thank you.
This is your opportunity to discuss other things that we may not have that you want to get on, or if you recognize something. So I don't know if you've watched our other meetings, but it's kind of a free-flowing thing.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here, and I don't have anything else to add.
Welcome to the board. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Heather?
I don't have anything other than just a quick thank you to Mesa for pulling off those refreshments pretty quickly, and I thought they did a really excellent job, had a nice presentation, so thank you to them.
Was that did they use that as a fundraiser for the PTA with the donations? It was a good event.
Which then goes back, you know, back to the kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't,
Oh, probably didn't make that much, but
right.
yeah. Didn't pay
Everyone
for the
gets a-
ingredients, but
Well, those were all donated,
Donated, I
and the
know.
town is giving them a small token of appreciation, and they had I didn't hear if they collected much for donations, but it also gave them some visibility too, which I thought they really thought was valuable, and you know, like what Nick said, kind of forgotten about Mesa, so.
yeah. Farhad?
Yes, I want to give out the shout out to Mesa. I forgot earlier, so did a great job. Good food. Congratulations of being elected chair again. We'll follow your lead. Congratulations to you. Welcome, Lindsay. I hope you like it here. We got a new group of people. We're going to miss Susan for sure. I want to thank the townspeople for showing all the support they did, the trust and faith they have instilled in me. Now it becomes my job to pay back by showing some work. So thank you everybody for voting for us. Thank you for showing up in great numbers. I'm forever grateful to you. And Victor, Godspeed.
Laura?
Well, speaking of Mesa, they're hosting a movie this Sunday at 3 o'clock for families called Ferdinand, which is about a bull who has to struggle to clarify his beliefs, you know, and so it's an interesting story and timely, and I'm sure that, they're really hoping that they use that as an opportunity for teaching children. And we do know that youth are going to be active tomorrow. They're going to be expressing their voice, and we're trying to hold that while knowing that it's a learning opportunity for them, to know how they peacefully assemble, how they express their clarifying beliefs, in this case around gun regulation. So the Public Health and Safety Committee is aware, and we are definitely having our conversations, and we want to remind viewers that there is a policy in the town of Middlebury that if you have a gun and you want to turn it in or even have it held for a period of time safely, you can do that to the Middlebury Police Station, and they'll just either take it or hold it for you. So that is in effect right now. I know that we received a letter from one constituent about our support for a letter, sort of like what the supervisory union did, just asking for our support for gun regulation, not asking us to pass it ourselves, although she went to that step, and Chief Hanley says we don't, and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns told us we don't really have that jurisdiction to restrict bump stock ammunition or certain kinds of guns, but we can express our support for regulation. So it might be something that the board continues to think about, whether it wants to support that, as does the Public Health and Safety Committee. So I just wanted to mention those things. I also finally wanted to mention that there's an event, I mentioned it to Kathleen, a speaker who's coming to Middlebury tomorrow. His name is George Lakey. He wrote a book called Viking Economics, and he's doing a talk at Dana at the college at 7 o'clock tomorrow, Wednesday, on what we can learn from the Nordics. So fascinating talk. You might find it really interesting given our role in local government to catch that. He's also speaking the next night at the Congregational Church at 7 o'clock about the divided America and how that's actually an opportunity for us. So again, it's our stuff, so you might find that of interest, or viewers may find that of interest.
Thank you, Laura. Two things from me. I'll be talking with you on the Select Board Subcommittee appointments, and so be thinking about where you would like to serve and where you feel you can be most effective in the 2018 year. And likewise, be thinking about our off-site, and as things pop into your head, jot them down. Paula did a really nice job helping us bring all that together, but it starts with all those things that are on our list, and then she helps us prioritize them. So if we could come to that meeting with those things that we want to discuss, and then she'll help us work through prioritizing. So those are kind of two homework assignments. And I'll be in touch with you, each of you, to talk about where maybe if you could just shoot me a note if you have time, thoughts of what you would like to do as far as subcommittee appointments. Okay. No need for executive session. And I just found out I have to drive to Albany and pick up my wife.
Oh,
So
move to adjourn.
Careful, Brian.
Okay.
I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
I
And
did.
Second.
seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? All right.
Drive safely, everyone.
Are you driving now?